There's a ton of fragments and aspects in the game right now, and sometimes it can be kind of tough to know what your best bet is in terms of a build for PvP. Every playstyle, or even game mode specifically, can obviously benefit from particular setups, but today I just wanted to share what my go-to Titan build is for Crucible right now. Of course, I'm aware of the light subclasses that are being overshadowed by stasis, and I'd like to cover those in the future, but let's be honest, I see a lot more behemoths out there than any other Titan, so I figured I'd just show you my two current setups for that. Okay, for this first build, someone help me out please, come up with a name for this. For now, I'll call it the Crit Tanker or something. I always go into Crucible and play with the same mindset, but this particular build revolves around being able to clutch tough situations when I need to using friendly crystals and their two specific buffs. Straight to the point with it, I want to be able to do what's shown on screen. When I'm within 15 meters of my crystal, I have a 25% damage resistance, so if someone's shooting me with a 120 RPM hand cannon, for example, they'll only be dealing 68 to the head instead of the usual 90. If I'm weak, I can break a crystal for health, or if I'm already full health, I can break it for a special overshield. I say it's special because it literally cancels precision damage. I'm not going to get into the details of how that works because I've already made a video on it a while back, so let's just break down my whole build around this and then I'll point you to some of those videos. Oh, and a quick side note, if you end up finding this helpful or you enjoy it, consider subscribing, leaving a rating, or even a comment down below to let me know. If you're looking for new people to play with, we have nearly 3,000 people in our Discord and we'd love to see you there. Alright, starting with the subclass, the common items are Towering Barricade, Strafe Lift, and Shiver Strike. That's the same across both my builds. A lot of high skill Titans will actually prefer Catapult Lift, and I'll explain why later, but I find I play a lot smarter when I'm on Strafe Lift. Since this build revolves around crystals, I really need the Glacier Grenade. The first fragment that you need is Whisper of Chains. This is the one that gives you 25% resistance whenever you're around crystals, and crazy enough, it also gives you a plus 10 recovery bonus. The next one that you need is Whisper of Rhyme. This is the one where if you collect a shard, which comes from a crystal, you can get that special overshield chunk that I talked about. Each one gives you 12.5 hit points, and I have an entire video covering this alone. The third one is a bit of a flex. Right now I'm running Whisper of Conduction, and it's not because I need nearby stasis shards to track to my position. It's just because of the insane stat boost. Plus 10 to resilience and intellect is kind of huge, especially when intellect takes up 5 affinity on your armor slots. If I'm not running Conduction, I'm definitely running Whisper of Shards, so that whenever I do break my crystals, I get the 500% bonus to my grenade recharge rate. That is not a made up number. It varies between 400 and 575%, depending on how much discipline you run, and it's absolutely nuts. Plus, you get 10 resilience too. Now for my aspects, I run Crowdclasm because the slide is incredible, and it allows you to break your crystals really quickly in the heat of the moment. Second one, you really need to run Tectonic Harvest. This is what allows you to create shards whenever you shatter a crystal. Cherry on top is that it also gives you a 10% boost to your strength, so you get your melee back pretty quickly as well. Okay, on to my character right now. The first thing that inspired this build was Bungie's nerf to Quick Draw. They hit it pretty hard, and I've actually been enjoying Surplus a lot more. This Astral isn't the god roll. I haven't been lucky enough to get Surplus with opening shot, but either way, I've been enjoying Surplus because of how much handling it can give. I'll toss the numbers on screen, but that brings me to my next point, which is my exotic, the Heart of Inmost Light. This thing has so much it can do for your build, but the primary reason I'm using it is that whenever I use one ability, the other two charge super fast. If you want to know all about this exotic, I highly recommend you go check out my Titan exotic tier list that I made a couple of months ago. The charging of those abilities became really important to me because that goes hand in hand with Surplus, and it pretty much feels like I always have the old school quick draw now. So I think this would be a good time to talk about my stat distribution. Because of the Heart of Inmost Light exotic charging my abilities so quickly, I was actually able to spec a little bit lower with discipline and strength and pump up my intellect. You'll notice that that's at 80, even though I tend to preach that you don't need more than 70 because of the diminishing returns. Well, with this exotic, I can kind of sit in first class with that one. That leads to my discipline on the build. I'm currently running 70 instead of my usual 80. It's still really high because grenades are crucial for this build. For strength, I'm running as low as 50, even though I talk about how crucial the Shiver Strike is for movement, but that's because picking up those shards that I talked about earlier gives you such a good boost to your melee that I tend to have it most of the time anyways. Onto mobility, I find my sweet spot is 40 or 50. If I could run 40 and pump up one of my other stats by one tier, I would, but I can't right now with my current armor, so it's all good. Earlier, I mentioned I I'd explain why some Titans prefer Catapult. Well, the reason is that if you spec really low into mobility, your hop is super low. Like, take a look on screen. This is something I recorded a long time ago showing how high the hop is per level of mobility. Titan skating involves using your boost extremely quickly, like either a macro or your mouse wheel, for example. And so you want your hop to be really, really low. I just, like I said earlier, find I play a lot smarter when I don't have to focus on that. So I currently run strafe lift and 40 to 50 mobility. For resilience, I typically recommend 50, and the only reason is because of the fact that 120 RPM hand cannons are huge in the meta right now. If you run 40 resilience or lower, they can 1 crit 2 body you, and I just can't allow that with how prevalent they currently are. For this build, I run 60 so that I can have my barricade a little bit more often, which just helps me get the cycle going with Heart of Inmost Light. I always run 100 recovery. This has undoubtedly saved me more times than I can count or helped me get back into a fight to save my teammates. I do not recommend running anything less than 90. Alright, now let's talk about some mods. I run pretty much all arc armor except for my class item, and you'll see why in a bit. For my helmet, since I typically run hand cannon shotgun, yes, I know, inject the meta right into my veins, I use targeting mods for both of them. Ever since Quick Draw was nerfed, I desperately need the shotgun one for the faster ADS speed, and then the hand cannon one is just for that plus 10 aim assist. This leaves 2 affinity slots, so don't be shy, you can use whatever half mod you need. For gauntlets, I know a lot of people run reloaders, but I'm an oddball here and I actually prefer dexterity mods. In high level play, or if I go to review one of my VODs, I find myself dying mid-swap against really quick, excellent players more often than I do in the middle of a reload, for example. For a light subclass, I feel I need fastball, but on stasis I don't. Chest piece, I run unflinching hand cannon no matter what, and lately I've been toying with unflinching shotgun. I used to think the shotgun one wasn't that necessary, but I've had a few clutches in trials totally screwed up because of how much my shotgun gets flinched by one hand cannon shot, for example. So I've been fiddling around with this one a lot lately. On the boots, I run a single shotgun scavenger, and that's usually because I'm running a recovery mod plus, say, powerful friends, which we'll get into in a minute. Class item, I always have 2 of them ready. One of them has double bomber and one of them has double outreach. Those perks give a boost to either my grenade or my melee every time I use my barricade. I pretty much just go with the flow. If I feel like I'm not getting my grenade enough, I'll run the bomber one. If I feel like I'm not getting my melee enough, I'll run outreach. Now onto the seasonal mods. I'll try and make this quick because there's a lot of videos that cover these already, but essentially there's 5 of them. Radiant Light, Powerful Friends, High Energy Fire, Taking Charge, and then Quick Charge. You don't always have room for all of them, so I'll talk about which ones are my favorites or must-have, for example, but ultimately it's going to depend on your build and your stat distribution to see what you can fit where. The first is Radiant Light. This one gives a passive plus 20 boost to your strength stat. For the Behemoth, this is absolutely crucial, regardless of the fact that you get another bonus around Charged with Light. It says that you need to equip another arc mod in order to activate this, but the reality is we also have Powerful Friends. I can equip Radiant Light on one piece of armor and then Powerful Friends on a completely different one, and I don't need any other arc mods. These things will activate each other. Now, technically, Powerful Friends isn't as important on Titans because I don't think you need mobility like a Hunter, for example, but the reason I still really like this is the fact that using these allows me to spec super low into mobility and strength when I'm making a build using Dim, for example, knowing that I'm going to get this plus 40 stats. You can read the details of the mods with respect to what they do for Charged with Light, but the true reason I'm running them is because of these passive buffs. Number 3 actually has an asterisk. Currently, Quick Charge is a seasonal mod that makes you pull out shotguns or fusions a lot quicker. The problem is it doesn't actually do what it says. Bungie recently let us all know that this thing is bugged. I will admit that after extensive testing, this thing's definitely providing anywhere from like 5 to 12 handling, but even at that, 10 handling isn't a huge amount for the amount of affinity that this mod can cost you. The reason I'm putting it in the list though is because it's going to be buffed hopefully soon, and I think that'll be an absolute go-to no matter what for me. And that leaves us to the last 2, which is High Energy Fire and Taking Charge. If you become Charged with Light, which you can do via Radiant Light and Powerful Friends, High Energy Fire then gives you a 20% damage boost to your weapons. So this is what enables people to do a lot of 2-tapping with their 120s. It's definitely really nice, but I'm not always using 120s for that 2-tapping ability, and I just feel like if I have room for it, great, I'll use it. If I don't, I'm not too concerned. Taking Charge is just a method of becoming Charged with Light. Whenever you pick up an orb, you become Charged with Light. Fantastic in 6s, but in trials, I don't really find this to be necessary, so I don't actually run this one very often. Other than that, my favorite gun in the game right now is Palindrome. I have a rangefinder killing wind roll with a range masterwork. This thing is unbelievable. I have never felt a gun feel this good since I started playing Destiny. I can't seem to take this thing off, so I've been running it with an Astral lately, but I will admit the new Raid shotgun Found Verdict is unbelievable. It's the #1 shotgun in the game in my opinion, and since it's an energy slot, I would probably join the meta and run a 120 or any kinetic that I'm feeling that day. All right, now this is my second build, and it's going to go a lot quicker because I've already covered a lot of the core concepts in the first one. You might be shaking your head because, wow, you're looking at Doom Archers already, but the fact is that sometimes certain builds just don't work against certain playstyles. This one's a little quicker paced and gives me the ability to be a bit more aggressive against my opponents, and I think I'll just jump right into the subclass for you. So here you'll notice that I'm still running Towering Barricade, Strafe Lift, and Shiver Strike. Glacier Grenade, I still run that, and the reason is because of the Whisper of Chains fragment. I literally think this is the best fragment in the game, and you should absolutely run it if you're a Titan. But this time we're actually switching to Howl of the Storm. This is the one that lets me use my melee mid-slide and actually create these crystals in front of me, which will also freeze people. Howl is insane. I've outplayed so many supers or saved my ass in 1v3ing in trials because of this thing freezing someone who is aping at me. It pairs unbelievably well with that Whisper of Chains because now you have 5 crystals in your nade and more crystals in your melee, and I absolutely love it. Now, because I have so many more crystals, the second fragment that I run is Whisper of Shards because I can constantly be breaking these crystals and it's easy peasy. The third one again is a bit of a flex. I'm typically running either Whisper of Durance for that extra 10 strength so that I can get Howl as much as possible, or I'll run Conduction again for that amazing plus 20 stat build. Right now I'm running a 5, 6, 10, 8, 7, 6, but again, I actually would prefer to run a 4 and a 5 for my mobility and resilience, take those 2 stat tiers now that I'm running 4 and a 5, and pump my melee up to 80. I just like an idiot accidentally deleted some of my armor when I was cleaning out my vault because we're out of space, and now this is the best I can do for today. So ultimately it would be a 4, 5, 10, 8, 7, 8. All of the mods are exactly as we discussed, but I find with this build, since Howl uses up my melee, I lean towards Outreach on my class item way more than Bomber. And for those who don't know about Dunes, it gives me faster sprint speed. I get to chain a bunch of enemies around me whenever I melee somebody up to 20 meters, and it does 80 damage. Or is it 85? I'm actually forgetting. Anyways, and check this out. You can actually chain your Howl of Storm crystals as well. I hope this helps. I hope your finger slips and you accidentally hit that subscribe button, maybe even the like button. And I hope to catch you in the next video.